Man, correct.
All right, we're live and in action now. So, welcome to the Brewer Savages Bible study. I don't ever know what day it is. It's Wednesday, though. Wednesday, April the 22nd, 2020. Corona apocalypse and all that good stuff. Here we are on Zoom. We got our faithful few plus Carson, and Evie will make her slight appearance and soon disappearance, I'm sure. But anyways, welcome if you're seeing this later. Hopefully we will get this on Facebook and YouTube at a decent hour. You just never know how the internet's going to process. So TBD. I've been doing this thing like our normal Wednesday night Bible studies as we've worked through here. Is that good, Hunter? Pretty good? Okay, good. Glad you're enjoying the lesson already.
So
Evie feels like she's eating the Barbie doll. But I decided tonight to do it more like we do on our Sunday night and have more of a. Well, I want to try to study through a book of the Bible. We might not make it all the way through. Definitely not going to tonight. But on Sunday nights, we've been going through the book of Romans, and it's kind of interesting because. What's up, hey Joe? It's kind of interesting because our Sunday school lessons before the Corona hit, a lot of the church, not everybody has the same lesson, but a lot of them were in the book of Romans. So I'm not going to do an exhaustive study on the book of Romans, but I do want to touch a little bit here and there and maybe do some summaries. And tonight, we're going to be in Romans chapter 1. And not the whole chapter, and maybe not the most conventional way to approach this chapter. But as I studied it and as I've talked to people and gathered information and gotten ideas for what I should talk about tonight, this is the way I felt like I should talk. So, Romans chapter 1, if you want to turn there, we're going to start in verse 21, if I can read the small print here. Romans chapter 1, verse 21. And we're not going to read too many verses. And we're not going to read it right out the gate here, but we are going to read it. Tonight's voice is once again brought to you by Vitamin Water. Drinking this drink is probably more refreshing than refreshing most websites.
And hot Cheetos.
And hot Cheetos. All right, so this is my title, and I don't always have a title. I'm not a good title and 3-point and summary invitation preacher kind of guy. I'm just kind of a talk about the random things that I think about. But I thought about this. Here's my title. How's it going? We talk about that, or that's how I start a lot of my conversations, especially with my youth that I don't get to talk to every day or whatever I want to say. How's it going? How's things? How's life? How's that working out for you? So I think a lot of people do that. If you're a 90s baby, you remember the "What's up" trend, but I'm not gonna relive that. YouTube it. It was a commercial. What's up? But that's what I basically want to talk about. How's it going? How's your life working out for you? And once again, my name is not Bridget Cressman, but shout out to Bridget Cressman for letting us use her Zoom login. So if you see that, don't be confused, but we are bumming off that, you know what I'm saying? Because times be hard and money is tight. Romans chapter 21, or chapter 1, verse 21, I want to say, how's it going? I really guess what I want to say is, how is it going living your way? Now, we've had several Bible studies on this topic. I mean, this is a youth topic. We always talking about living right and doing what the Lord wants you to do and not living for the world, not living in sin. So I guess my question is, how's your life going based on how you've been living? You live the way you want to live. So how's that working out for you? That's my question. And one of the last Bible studies I think we actually had in person on a Wednesday night, we talked about Psalm chapter 1. We talked about blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful. And the psalmist contrasts the person who's living for the Lord and the person who's not living for the Lord and their different results and how those choices are working out for them. So I'm not going to reteach that lesson, but with that in mind, I challenged y'all, the youth, to look at how you're living and see, is it working for you? All the 99 problems that you've got, are they self-inflicted because you're a bonehead and because you just refuse to listen to wise counsel, whether it be the wise counsel of the Bible or the wise counsel of your parents or your teachers? I mean, if you get in trouble in school, I got a lot of kids at school that get in trouble in my class, and they don't ever get sent out of my room before I at least tell them once what to do and what not to do. And sometimes they can't listen to it. They got to do it their own way. And my question is, how's that going for you? How's it working out living your life the way you're living? I'm going to read you what Paul said about, this is kind of a summary really in Romans chapter 1 of the history of mankind and the gradual falling away from the Lord. Now, I could give a whole big summary of this. We got people on here to talk. Who were the first two people in the Bible? Who were the first two?
Ooh. Adam and Eve.
Adam and Eve. That's right, Adam and Eve. Not Will and Steve. That's the bottom right corner of your screen there, but Adam and Eve. All right, so that's who the first two people were. So everybody that was ever born after that were kin to them. So that means at one point in time, everybody on earth was either Adam, Adam's husband, or Adam's kids. And Adam walked with the Lord. So he knew the Lord. He knew the Lord's ways. He knew the Lord's will. He knew the Lord's rules. He knew the Lord's purpose because he walked and talked with the Lord. Okay, fast forward again. There was another bottleneck. There's a biology term for you, Hunter. A bottleneck effect. Maybe you don't have that on your college test this time. But there was another bottleneck of the humankind to where there was these few people and they had babies, and then there was just a few people again. What was that? What is that? Noah and the ark. Noah and his wife and his 3 sons and their 3 wives. So 8 people. So once upon a time, again, the earth population was shrunk to just a few people. And who were those people? You were either Noah, you were either Noah's wife, Noah's kids, or Noah's kids-in-law. That was it. That was everybody. So everybody on earth at that time knew Noah, and Noah knew God. So at one point in time, every human on earth knew God, knew his ways, knew his past, knew his precept, knew his will, knew his commandments. But what happened? Obviously, a lot of people don't know it by now, but that's kind of what Paul's talking about here. So let's just read. I'm going to start in verse. Let's just start in verse 18. Why not? We'll go back a few verses. This is Romans 1:18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who, by their unrighteousness, suppress the truth. That means they have the truth, but they're unrighteous, so they push the truth down, get it out of the way. For what can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world in the things that have been made. So they are without excuse. Now, that's a whole long Bible study, and we had that on Sunday night, so I'm not going to have that one again. But Paul, again, is saying that, hey, everybody at one point has had experience with God, if by no other means than just through observing him through his creation. So there's no excuse not to at least know there is a God and be seeking God. So this is what we're trying to get to. Verse 21, for although they knew God, they did not honor him as God. Okay, so at one point in time, Noah and his kids knew God, and I would assume that Noah's grandkids knew God because Noah would have probably been around to tell them if his sons didn't. And I'm sure his sons were godly men, at least at some point in their life have had the conversation with their kids of who God is. And maybe even several generations, but somewhere between then and now, there are a lot of people who don't know the truth. So what happened? Although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him, but they became futile in their thinking and foolish, and their foolish hearts were darkened. They had the truth, they rejected the truth, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Claiming to be wise, I missed the rest.
What does it mean by darkened?
Okay, I'm going to go to that in just a second. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for the images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and other creeping things. This is really Paul's history of false religion. All right, so what's that got to do with what I'm talking about? The point was they had the truth. Now, if you're one of these 5 screens I'm seeing here, 6 people plus my wild children running around there somewhere, you have the truth because you have at least been to one Bible study of mine, and I'm not the greatest preacher that's ever lived, but I try to at least tell the truth because I try to get what I'm saying out of this book, and whether I say it right or don't say it right, if I read any of the word to you, it's the truth. And all you have been in church most of your life and all your life, so you have the truth. You know the truth. So you're one of these people who has the truth. My question is, are you living by this truth or are you not? Are you suppressing the truth? Because there's some results that come about from that. All right, so what happened to these people in this story here? They had the truth, but they didn't live by the truth. They didn't want the truth, so they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Okay, Hunter, You wanted to know what this means, that their foolish hearts were darkened. It's kind of an odd thing I guess an odd saying to say that their hearts were darkened. But I think the point is that God had, when you follow the Lord, and we've used this verse in the past few weeks too, thy word's a lamp unto my feet and a light to my path, that God's word and his way is the light in the darkness of this world. And if you live by him and walk by him, he'll guide your steps. And that goes back to Psalms chapter 1 again too. It talks about being blessed and how God plants him firmly by the rivers of water. And he has his way and his will is established by God because he's following God. That's when we come up with the term, follow God. I mean, we didn't just come up with that for no reason. Follow God means he goes some direction and we go behind him because we are following his path. I heard this story about this little kid, and it was deep snow, and he was grunting. He was walking behind his dad, and he was grunting. And the dad turned around to see why he was grunting. It's because the dad was taking big steps in the deep snow, and the little kid was taking as big a steps he could, and he's having to jump a little bit. But what he was trying to do was he was trying to put his steps exactly where his father's steps had been, because his father had trod out a path for him through the thickness, through the hard way. Me and Hunter were talking the other day. My poor yard. I mean, I ain't got the best yard. I could do better about, maybe poisoning all the weird grass and growing some good, nice Bermuda or something. But I try to keep it mowed. There's part of it I haven't really got to mow because it's the path that my dog and dogs before it, rest their souls, have run around and around and around my house. And grass doesn't even grow there. It's just a dirt path. And anybody who's a hunter knows that if you go out in the woods, there's a million different directions you can go in the woods. But the deer and the critters pretty much follow one path. We went fishing in a big pasture the other day. And of all that huge pasture, acres and acres and acres, the cows had one muddy path. They walked in a straight line behind one another and just wore it out. Why they didn't go to the left or right, I don't know. But I guess what I'm saying is God has a path for us, and it is well lit, and we know which way it is. When you venture off from that, when you turn to the right or to the left, you got to hack through the thicket yourself. You got to take your own machete and hack out your own path, or you've got to wander around in darkness. And because these people didn't want the truth of God, they wandered around in darkness. Their foolish hearts were darkened. They thought they knew more. So my question is, how's it going for you? Are you wandering around in the dark? Because I feel like that very few people in what we call the Bible Belt, at least not in our Wednesday night classes, there's very few people I think in my youth group who don't at least have some idea of the right things and the wrong things to do in life. But many, many people in this youth group and in our church and in my experience, and even me sometimes, many, many times we have chosen to wander around in the dark. And I guess my question is, how's that going for you? The boyfriend or the girlfriend that you got that lives wild like the devil, and you know they do, and you knew before you started dating them that if you started dating them, you were going to be wild, and you started dating them anyway. How'd that work out for you? Did they make you a better Christian? Did they keep your life clean and pure? Or the best friend, the one that you've been wanting to be friends with, but you wasn't cool enough, and all of a sudden y'all started being cool, and they're the wild party type. Or maybe it's you. Maybe you're the one that's the wild party type, and you're leading all your other friends off the path. So when you get off the path and you wander your own way and you walk in the dark, how's that working out for you? How well is your life going off the beaten path? What happened to these people here that Paul's talking about, the wicked people of history, is that they had the truth. At one point in time, all human beings had the truth. And through either the fault of their parents for not telling the truth to their kids, or the fault of the kids for rejecting the truth that they heard, people began to split and branch and walk off the path that God had laid for them, to walk out of the truth. And since they did that, their futile thinking, their foolish hearts became darkened. They claimed to be wise, but they became fools. And they exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Now, again, I'm not here to teach the whole chapter of Romans 1. This is just a thought I had, and it came from Romans 1. But if you read the rest of this chapter, it talks about all the wickedness and ungodliness that came from these people rejecting the truth. They knew better. That's what I'm trying to say. They knew better. And I feel like that's exactly where we are. We're blessed. We're not a far off country that's never had a missionary from the faith come to them. We're not in the dark. If we walk in the dark, it's because we have left the opportunity of knowing the truth and the light, and we have taken our own way. So if you're in that boat, how's it working out for you? All right. Here's another thought for you. If you're rejecting the truth, how long do you think you can do that? How long can you keep it up? You have rejected the truth and you're walking off on your own path, and you claim to be a Christian. You claim to be a follower. He's going and you're following behind him. You claim to be a follower, but you're not really following him right now. You went this way. How long do you think you can keep that up before you fall off a cliff, or before you hit a dead end, or you run into a brick wall, or you get lost in the woods? How long can you keep it up before God comes looking for you? We were teaching Lucy the other night, and it's an old song and it's an old story, and it's good for new kids too. About the 99 sheep that went not astray, but the shepherd went off looking for the one little lost lamb. We were trying to tell her that because in her little kid Bible, there's a picture of the shepherd holding one little sheep, and it was talking about the 99. So I was like, well, this is a story I can read her, and she can actually see a little picture of it. Maybe it'll make sense. But if you're one of his 100 sheep and you leave the 99, he's not going to be like, well, hate that. No, he's going to come looking for you. So how long can you wander off the path before he comes for you? Because it's usually better off if you wander your way back, or you choose to get right with the Lord and you make things right before he has to forcibly bring you back. And I guess another reference for that would be John 10:27. I'm going to read that one real quick. John 10:27. John 10:27. This whole section is about God and his people and his sheep. But he says in verse 27, let me start in verse 25. Jesus answered them, I told you, and you do not believe. The works that I do in my Father's name bear witness of me. Verse 26, he hits him right in the mouth. He says, but you do not believe because you are not my sheep. My sheep hear my voice, and I know them, and they follow me. Now, I'm not trying to take this verse out of context and teach a lesson that Jesus wasn't trying to teach, but I feel like that I'm accurate in saying that if you're his sheep, you're going to know his voice, and you're going to follow him, because he said that. He said it right here in John. So if you're not on his path, you're wandering off in the left field somewhere, and you never hear him calling you back, if he never comes to look for you, it could be that you're not his sheep. And I think that's my greatest fear as a youth director, is that I fear that my youth, sometimes they want to go out and sow their wild oats and live their little wild life, but they want to come back, when they're grown, they're going to come back and love the Lord. It's a strong possibility that maybe you don't know the Lord, because as appealing as it is to anybody to go out into the world and live the fun life and the party life and as much fun as you can have while you're young life, that is appealing. But there ought to be part of you, at least part, if not a huge part of you, that has a desire to love the Lord and to live for the Lord and to serve the Lord. And if there's not a desire, if you don't hear his commandments and have a desire to follow his commandments, then that's a sign that maybe you are not one of his sheep. That goes back a couple of weeks ago. If you want to check hit the subscribe button and check me out on YouTube. If you want to go check that out, you can. One of our other lessons a few weeks ago, I copied straight out from Dr. Rogers about the "Are you saved?" test. How do you know you're saved? And the first one he mentioned was the commandment test. And then he had the companion test. Then he had the commitment test. The commandment test is, do you hear his voice and follow him? If you don't, if you have the truth and reject the truth, it might not be very long before your heart's darkened. And then your companion test, when you're not hanging out with the other 99 sheep, you're off in the woods, you're not going to find sheep in the woods. You're going to find wolves. You're going to find wild creatures. You're going to find maybe some folks that were supposed to be sheep, but they wandered off too. You're not going to find good company out there. Your companions are going to be off. And then the commitment test. If you see him leading you down a path and you don't want to follow his path, if you can't check these 3 boxes, you need to check and see if maybe you're really in a relationship with Christ. Because when you choose to follow Christ, you ought to know and obey his commandments. You ought to hang out with his people, and you ought to have your life committed to him. So maybe that's some rambling thoughts tonight. And this is not my longest Bible study ever. Everybody said thanks for that. But I'm gonna read you one more verse. Now again, I'm not trying to take this out of context, but this is I'm looking way down the road. Like this is where we're at. We're on God's path, and right at the fork where you choose to go another way. I'm not talking about when you're a million miles away or a million miles apart. I'm talking about right at the point where you're diverging God's way. There's some results to that. Again, I don't know if you could say it was Noah's kids or Noah's grandkids or Noah's great grandkids, but at some point, some of them split. And now you have people all over the world that are kin to Noah, the way we believe the Bible, but they've never even heard in their lifetime, they've never even heard the gospel because they've gotten so far away from the truth, and anybody that knows the truth, they don't even know the truth. But at one point, all the people knew the truth. So what happens way on down the road when the truth has been rejected long enough? Well, I'm going to read to you what I believe is an end times verse, something that will be characteristic of the time when Jesus comes back or right before he comes back. This is 2 Thessalonians. This is in the New Testament. It's a small book. It's right before Timothy, if you know where that's at. 1st and 2nd Timothy come right after 1st and 2nd Thessalonians. But this, I believe, is talking about the Antichrist and the end times and things. But this is really interesting, I think.
What is it?
2 Thessalonians chapter 2. And we're going to be in verse 11 and 12. What I'm talking about tonight is knowing the truth and rejecting the truth. What happens to you? How is that going for you? I can tell you how it went for these other folks. And I can tell you how it's going to go in the future. This is what Paul, again, says about the end of time, or the wicked days that are maybe here, but are definitely coming. Verse 11, 2 Thessalonians 2:11. Therefore, let's just read starting verse 9. I always like to start a little early. The coming of the lawless one, which we again believe could be a reference to the Antichrist. The coming of the lawless one is by the activity of Satan, with all the power and false signs and wonders, and with all wicked deception for those who are perishing. So we're talking about the ones who are perishing, the evil people, the people who don't know the Lord. They have a wicked deception. That means that an evil thing has fooled them. They've been tricked. This is the key, because they refused to love the truth and so be saved. Therefore, God sends them a strong delusion so that they may believe what is false, in order that they may be condemned who did not believe the truth but had pleasure in unrighteousness. God is not, by my understanding, God is not forceful in his drawing of you. Now, that's another debate for another day. Irresistible grace versus can you choose to reject God or can you not choose to reject God? But it seems to me here in this verse that God says they had the choice, but they didn't want the truth. So since they didn't want the truth, God himself sent and allowed them to be fooled. He allowed them to believe a lie. I mean, but wouldn't you? Have you ever done that? Have you ever had somebody that wouldn't listen to you and wouldn't listen to you and wouldn't listen to you? And you try to tell them the truth, you try to tell them the truth, and eventually you started telling them what they wanted to hear because they didn't want to know, they didn't want to hear it anyway. I think that's almost what it's saying here, that since God gave them the truth and they didn't want the truth, that he let them believe the lie that they wanted to believe anyway. And the end result is they perish. They, for those that are perishing because they refused to love, and they had no pleasure in truth, but they had pleasure in righteousness, and they were condemned. So to sum this up, you know the truth. If you don't know the truth, you got access to the truth. Walmart sells the truth for cheaper than $5. You can buy a Bible. If you don't have anything but a phone, you can Google it and you can look up the Bible, and you can tune in every Wednesday night and every Sunday to Brother Tim and listen to the truth expounded on and preached to you. And if you don't have any of those things, leave a comment and I'll get you a Bible. You can get the truth. My question is not do you have the truth, is what are you doing with the truth? How is your life going? And is it going a good way or a bad way, and why? Is your life in the pits? And let's look back and see if your life's in the ditch. Rewind a little bit and see where you split. See where the fork happened. See where you diverged. And see if maybe you had the truth and you rejected it. Because I think that is a sadly fixable problem that so many people suffer with. All right, so that's it. Still took me probably 20-something minutes. But anybody got a question or comment on this subject? Romans chapter 1. Maybe I'll talk about something else in Romans next week. Maybe I won't. But I do want to kind of get this Romans. And I might not make it through all the chapters, but that was on my mind tonight.
All
right.
Did good, big dog.
Thank you.
Real good.
So before Evie breaks down and everything else, I'm going to hit the stop record button, and then when I get off here, we'll pray after I stop recording.